All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board meeting. We're going to have a public hearing first, which I call to order at 7, and we'll stand to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so tonight we're going to hold a public hearing pursuant to RSA 198-20B 3A. The Goffstown School Board will be holding a hearing to accept public input relative to accepting and expanding security action for education, which is SAFE grants by the state of New Hampshire PSIF program. Scott, do you want to go talk through that?
So as was mentioned at the last school board meeting, the state of New Hampshire awarded the SAFE grants to numerous schools throughout the district. Goffstown was fortunate to receive a grant as well in the amount of $110,280. The grants were for 3 projects. One was Goffstown High School access controls. That project is valued at a little over $152,000, but the maximum award was $100,000. So Goffstown High School got the maximum award. Mountain View Middle School and Bartlett Elementary School, we also put in for access control addition. So we already have access controls there, but we wanted to put a few more doors on that system, and that's a little over $10,000. So with that, we're hoping that with the board's acceptance this evening, we can proceed with this project and have it done during the summertime. And then from there, all of our schools in Goffstown will have access controls, which again is a good thing for security, and it's also a lot better way to manage, access to our doors.
Does anybody have any questions for Scott? We'll do the motion in the meeting later on. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, seeing none, is there public comment for any questions on this tonight? Okay, seeing none. If everybody's good, then we can adjourn the public hearing.
Motion to adjourn the public hearing.
By Dan, do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. So now we're going to open up the school board meeting at 7:03. And we already did the pledge, so we don't need to do that again.
Nope.
And correspondence.
So just a few things this evening. One thing that I thought you'd be interested to see, this is a newsletter that Mrs. Lamson had sent out to all of our staff, and it just really summarizes the work that's being done around Schoology and providing resources for teachers, so I thought you'd be interested to see that. The second thing, Mrs. Moran and I talked about and looked at, there was an interesting project happening in the town of Epping where a 315-unit apartment building was overturned for the time being, but we thought it was interesting because this community is struggling with the same concept of rental units and struggling to keep up with school enrollment. And lastly, Mr. McBride sent a letter on behalf of Goffstown High School thanking Hannaford Supermarket for a donation of $702. So many thanks to Hannaford.
Great, thank you. All right, commendations, good news. Hi, Lily.
Hi. So as things are coming to break, we've had a lot of holiday parties. So Student Council hosted theirs last week, and it was with the Polar Express and cookies and a gift swap. And then our select vocal ensemble is having a Christmas party this Wednesday. And Peer Outreach last week handed out cocoa in the morning for students in the hallway. And then I know that the girls have a basketball game tomorrow, so good luck to them. And yes,
Thank you, Lily. Anyone else? Commendations, good news?
I'll mention 2 things,
Yeah, go ahead,
Heather.
Wendy.
I just wanted to mention that this week Mountain View is having Spirit Week, and tomorrow is Twin, Triplet, and Quadruplet Day. So thank you to all of the staff and students for participating in that. Also today at Bartlett, Dance Vision Network came over and did a few pieces of their production of the Nutcracker for all of the students. So a big thank you to Dance Visions for exposing some of our young kids to the arts.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I'll open to public comment. I don't see any, so we're going to close public comment. Approval of the December 5th school board meeting minutes. Everybody have a chance to read through them? Anybody see anything? If not, I'll take a motion to accept them.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 5th school board meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Shane. Do I have a second? By Caroline. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
One abstention.
One abstention.
I was not here.
All right, thank you, Dan. All right, so we're going to change up the agenda just a little bit. Field trip for the high school is further down, but we have Mr. McDermott and Ms. Andrew here to discuss some field trip stuff, so we figured we'd do them now so that they can go home.
So if I could just provide a little bit of context and introduction, then I'll hand it off to our guests. So the board will recall that quite a bit of time ago at this point, the board approved a trip to Italy that was supposed to be happening. We ended up having to cancel that trip. We have new chaperones that are involved, and the board is aware that that trip is a go at this point, so we're very happy that Abby and Mr. McDermott will be taking the kids. So we want to kind of just give a little bit of an overview on that, and then also they have a couple of ideas they'd like to float, thinking about some travel for an 8th grade trip that we're interested in, as well as another high school trip in '24. So with that, Abby and Kurt.
So I'm not sure if you all saw the trip that was proposed for Italy.
Do we?
I don't know how this worked with Catherine when she came the first time.
Yeah, so they saw a sample itinerary at that time,
Okay.
but what you're doing is a little bit different, so maybe you could just kind of go over, just give a
Little bit
little bit of a
different.
general overview.
Yeah, we'll be flying out on Saturday night, being there first thing Sunday morning, so we'll have Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, flying out Friday. So it's a little shorter. The itinerary is similar, although I don't think we're going to get out of Rome much. We're going to be right in the center of things. Kurt has traveled to Italy. I've traveled to France about 1 billion times with kids. So this is sort of like, it's new territory for me, but the travel piece is very much the same. And I love this company because they teach kids how to travel. They don't.
What's the company?
It's called Students Love Travel, and I've been traveling with them since 2012. I take kids to Quebec for, sort of get the idea of travel, and then the year later or 2 years later, depending on what's going on in the world, I take them to France. The last trip to France was 2019, and it was delightful. It was a really nice small group, a parent, chaperone, and probably 9 or 10 kids. It went really well. So this is a group of 7 kids. Kurt has been to Italy before, so his feet are nice and wet and ready to go. And I don't know, I have copies of the itinerary. I'm not really sure what you're looking for from us, other than that it's happening, and I know
Just
we have
kind of
someone-
general information
you
for
have
the
a- You have a
board.
child who's going,
Just-
so.
I do. My youngest is going. She's very excited. She was
Yeah.
supposed to go to the trip
I know,
back when you were first doing it,
yeah.
so.
So if I can pass out copies of the itinerary
Yeah,
if
that'd
you
be
want.
great.
Okay. You want to talk a little? You want to talk while I walk?
Okay. Those are the basics. We're going February vacation. I've taken kids to Poland for a month before, so I've traveled with students and different educational opportunities. So, yeah, pretty straightforward.
That's fine, I can share with Brian.
They had to do a little bit of wrangling at Students Love Travel because we're doing the trip, I think, in a more compressed time frame than they're used to, just because of the cancellation and getting it going again. And we wanted to take the same population of kids, so make it available to them at least.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, anybody have any questions?
Do you guys want to give a little bit of a sneak preview of what you might be seeking for approval in the future from the board with respect to the 8th
Right.
grade trip and
As you know, I retired.
kind of?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Thanks for the bell. But pretending, what was it, 5 minutes before school started? Maybe 3 minutes before I got a call.
We're delighted that you're still with us.
Yes.
So I'm teaching part-time at the middle school, 8th grade. Love it. go in, teach kids, leave. It's really sweet deal. I'm very happy. I'm really enjoying it. The only reason I retired was because of the drive. I'm 2.5 hours a day on the road to drive here. So I couldn't do that anymore, and now I'm still doing it. But the group of kids that I have, I thought it would be cool to take them to Canada, to Quebec, the short trip, the 3-day weekend thing, to sort of lay the groundwork for them to be able to travel in high school with Sia, and or me, because I would be willing. I have kids who I had as freshmen that I would love to take to France. So couldn't pull it off this year. Was more interested in replacing the Italy trip so that the kids could go, the kids who had wanted to go last year. So I have already kind of started things in motion with Students Love Travel to see if they can start looking at what 2024 would look like. And I'd love to take a group of kids of 8th graders. I've already spoken to Jessica at the high school, Mrs. Milligan, I don't know, at the middle school, and she's all for it. I wanted to send things out to parents, but I thought I would talk to you first, just so that you wouldn't be like, we are sending kids. And I don't know if it can even happen. They've offered me Memorial Day weekend, which I'm not thrilled to take kids on Memorial Day weekend because I think families do stuff. So I'm still sort of investigating, but I just wanted you to know that we're kind of thinking about that. And then for Paris or Paris and the Loire Valley, which is what the trip we did in 2019, was an amazing trip. I would love to take my last group of kids to
But not until 24, right?
2024. So the kids would be seniors. I mean, I would have loved to do it this year with the kids who are seniors, but
And the Quebec trip you're thinking for this spring?
for this spring, if that's.
So, question for the board would be, this is exploratory at this point. Would you be interested in considering approving this so that Abby can start to do the legwork to see what she has for interest, et cetera, et cetera? Because that will dictate costs and everything else that goes along with it, right?
Yeah. And because we've traveled with this group so many times, I'm confident that they will give you, I mean, the price was decent for Italy.
Yeah, it was.
It's a decent price for Quebec. It's a nice little trip. It just gives them a taste of travel. They do a little learning about traveling and a lot of learning about Quebec, but when we get to Europe, they do a lot of learning about travel.
I think it's awesome. I think it ties right into the curriculum going into French studies, and everybody came from France to Quebec, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're thinking kind of in the May timeframe of 23,
We used to do
right?
a 3-day weekend in May. We have done a 3-day weekend in April before, and the last time we did it, it was like gale force winds and blizzard on the way home. So, we're walking around in Birkenstocks and bare feet, and it's snowing. So I'm kind of feeling like May is better, and I'm also trying to work with when's the 8th grade trip and how many kids are going to be. It may not be able to happen because I just
So
showed up.
the 8th grade trip to DC is in April?
It's in April, yep.
It's an April break, right?
They're leaving right prior to April break on that Thursday.
Right.
There's 106 kids that are registered for the trip, to my knowledge, at this time.
That's a pretty big group.
It's a very large group, the largest we've had go in a long time.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
It's because people are dying to get out.
Ellen, I saw your hand up. Go
That's
ahead.
true.
I'm totally supportive of any efforts to bring our kids out of the district and expose them to the world
Cool.
outside, especially Europe. I've been on a couple of trips through the high school, and they were always phenomenal. Well-organized, structured. I never felt that the kids were in any jeopardy or danger, or that everything was set up very, very well, and stayed in nice places. I'd recommend parents, if you're thinking about it, if you can do it, let your kid go. It's a life experience. Yeah, wonderful.
I run a pretty tight ship. I don't let the kids out of my sight. I think sometimes parents are surprised that you're not going to let them go out and no, I want to keep them close. And 8th graders especially, I'm sure, lasso them.
Right.
And we may not be able to pull it off, but I wanted to throw it out there as a possibility.
Well, I see a lot of shaking of heads. Go ahead, Retta.
I echo what everybody else says, but
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's really important to understand is that it often opens the door for these students to go into some sort of international work when they start seeing what's happening in the world. So it just creates opportunities down the road.
We had that 2019 trip, I had a kid meet us in Paris who was living abroad for a year, and she met our group of kids, and I had traveled with her in 2015 or whatever it was. I mean, it's,
How cool is
it
that?
was
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's all
Does
good.
anybody
Good stuff.
else have questions? So I hear shaking, or I see shaking heads. Everybody is good to have them get more information, Dan? And then as soon as you have that, let us know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And actually, if I can make it a little easier for Abby,
Yeah.
since the board has already heard from Abby, when you get the details, and if you have, why don't you just plan to give it to me and not drag you out on another evening?
Yeah.
I'm happy to present it on your behalf.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And thank you for taking over the Italy trip. Appreciate
And thank you,
that.
Mr. McDermott, for being there when we need you, as you
Chaperone,
always
yeah.
are.
Chaperone.
Did
Oh,
not even
excellent.
hesitate. When I asked him, he was like, yes. Okay.
It'll be a fun trip.
When I went to Italy before, I kept trying to speak Spanish, so I'm gonna have to work on that a little bit.
We'll work on that. We got- we
You
gotta-
do know that's a different language.
I was
It's just
informed of that
Similar, but different.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Questions?
They're all romance languages.
Exactly.
That's what I kept saying. Finally met a guy from Spain, so it worked out.
Right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. So
Thank you.
go home.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
support.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too, thank you.
All right, so now we're going to get back into our committee reports. So the first is manifest and vouchers. You did. Dan, Scott?
I'd like to start by offering a motion to approve a manifest dated December 19th, 2022, in the amount of $2,459,230.03.
All right, do I have a second? By Caroline. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
We have payroll and payroll taxes, $1,009,000. Here's an interesting one. We have sped activities. Sometimes they bill us ahead of time, sometimes they bill us right on time, and sometimes they bill us late. We have one at the Bedford School District, out-of-district placement, summer ESY, $22,428. The Birch Tree Center, $11,656, out-of-district for January. Lighthouse School, $10,772 for December. Johnson ABA Consulting, sped contract services, November and December, $75.60. Celeste, out-of-district, September and December. That's kind of weird. Scott can answer that one later. $7,083. Mountain Prospect Academy, out-of-district for October, $59.26. That's about a total of $65,500. Of those invoices, $5,000 and over. Some general expenses, we paid the SAU $167,243 for December. Goffstown Truck Center, regular ed transportation and fuel costs, $99,000. Of the $99,000, the fuel surcharge was about $11,000, because our contracted rate, if you want to think about it, is $1.50. So we got Dead River Company, propane, $27,006. WEI, replacement servers, $22,110, and that money came back from purchases that were already on the books in FY22. The Home Depot Pro, that's our custodial supplies, a little over $10,000. BMO Harris, that's the credit card, but it was for HVAC filters, IT software, repairing the truck, $9,600. The Entrado Interactive is for School Messenger, $82.83, and if you were all listening on Friday, you know what that's all about. Eversource Electricity, $7,700. School supplies from Amazon, $5,900. MVMS Turf Care Agreement, $56.75 to a company, well, would you imagine, SGS Turf Care. Goffstown Babe Ruth, $5,000 for the Allard Park lease and the improvements thereof, $368,493 total of $5,000 above for general expenses. And of course, we bought some chocolate milk and other food items for $14,000. Any questions?
All right,
That went easy.
that was easy. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right, so Scott, you have a bunch of stuff.
Sure. So tonight, in the A&F committee, we went over a handful of items, most of which you're somewhat familiar with. The first one is use of capital reserve funds. You'll recall, over the last couple of meetings, we talked about the need to replace the Glen Lake boiler at $35,600, as well as to replace the Goffstown High School fire panel at $47,209. During the A&F meeting, Dan inquired about, there were two different options for the replacement. One was a medium efficiency unit, and then there was another one for about $3,000 more for a high efficiency unit. And Dan had asked that upon approval tonight, that Randy just try to figure out, what was our return on investment from going from medium to high efficiency. So we'll do that accordingly. So again, I did give the salmon-colored sheet or potential motions which you could make. The thought process was to use the capital reserve fund for these two replacement items, since they were not budgeted for, and we did not know that they would need to be replaced. It kind of fits into the intent of the capital reserve fund when it was established a few years ago, for both planned and unplanned replacement items. So if there is agreement with the board, there is a suggested motion for you on that sheet. It would be number 3.
Ellen,
I have do you want a motion first, or can I ask a question?
ask a question.
Okay. There are a number of terms that I keep getting confused with what they are and what's in them. What's the difference between this district's facility capital reserve fund, CIP, and the emergency contingency fund? I hear these terms, and to me, they sound like they're being used interchangeably, but I don't think they are. I think they're different.
They're different.
They are.
And what's the difference between them, and
All right,
why
so-
are we using that instead of?
Scott,
So
do
we'll
you
start
want-
off with CIP. It's an acronym for Capital Improvements Plan, and it is first and foremost a planning document. We had over 70 items on the CIP. Town requires us to list any project over $25,000, and we include both IT needs as well as physical plant needs on that document. In that document, there is a funding source, whether that be tax appropriation, which is our budget, capital reserve fund, grants, et cetera. But first and foremost, it's a planning tool. The 5% contingency fund, that is a fund that the voters approved last year. It used to be a 2.5% contingency fund, and that is really a set-aside on your balance sheet, which it's more of an accounting type of thing, but we're allowed to set aside. It's not a separate bank account. It just remains, essentially in our bank account, but it's set aside, and it's there for more or less unplanned emergency-related expenses. We have about $865,000 in that. It can be used for those unplanned emergency-related expenditures as well as tax relief. So as I have stated last year when we proposed it, we project revenues, and we also project what we think we're going to have left over in our budget, and that informs us as to what we might have as excess, what will go back to the taxpayers to offset the tax rate. If for some reason we do not hit those revenue targets, or we do not have as much of an underspend of the budget as what we predict, you can use that 5% contingency fund to level out the tax rate. So the reason why, then the last one is your capital reserve fund. Your capital reserve fund was established a few years ago, about 4 years ago. And the purpose of that capital reserve fund was to replace existing capital assets. And in doing so, that was for both planned and unplanned capital assets. So in this case, this was probably the first time that we are using it for what's called an unplanned replacement of a capital asset. In the past, it's been more or less planned projects. We recently talked, a meeting or two ago, we talked about the theater renovation. That's coming from capital reserve fund, but that was a planned project. And but this one here is unplanned. So in using the capital reserve fund, I believe that it meets the spirit of why it was set up in the first place. So that if you do have something that comes up and it's something that you can do within the capital reserve fund, and clearly this is the case, then you would do so. If, for an example, we were hit with a $400,000 emergency expense, we wouldn't have enough money in the CRF, and we would be forced to go to that 5% contingency fund. So that's my explanation.
Go ahead, Ellen.
And the CRF is made up of the funds that we ask each year, the 200,000 or 300,000?
That's correct.
And what's the balance of that now?
In your packets,
I saw it someplace, yeah.
you'll
Yeah, it's
see
on the
that.
second one. No, it's not. I don't know where it is. I've never
Right
seen
now,
it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was looking at it too, but
Okay.
I found it.
If you were to proceed with using the capital reserve fund for the boiler and the fire panel, you would have approximately $66,000, a little under $66,000 remaining.
Thank you, Scott. I had to ask because I think when we talk with the public and the budget committee, I think sometimes the terms and these various funding sources get mixed.
Right.
And I appreciate the clarity with which Scott explains it.
No, that's good. On the other backside of the motion is the balance of the
I know, I
capital
saw it
reserve
somewhere.
fund. So on that second packet. So are you all set, Ellen?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Scott on this? If not, he has a motion for us. If somebody wants to read it.
I can read it.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
I motion to authorize the business administrator and facilities director to proceed with the replacement of the Glen Lake boiler at the cost of $35,600 and the replacement of the GHS fire panel at the cost of $47,209, with funding to come from the district's facilities capital reserve fund.
Thank you. Do I have a second? By Ellen. Any further discussion? Yep, go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, these include a 10% contingency for project overruns?
They don't. I don't think we're going to have one. We literally just got these updated a week or two ago, and they're going to order them.
Are these fixed firm costs,
These are fixed costs. Yep.
including labor?
Including labor, yeah.
Wow. Congrats.
Thanks, Jared. Anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, very unanimous. All right, Scott, keep going.
All right. Next is the Goffstown Budget Committee, and I know that we're going to probably be doing Budget Committee report out, but I felt that it would be important, because it deals with the warrant, to bring it forward. So Ellen was at that meeting as well. The Budget Committee put forward a motion that passed on an 8-4 vote, asking the school board to consider, the word was to consider, lowering the capital reserve fund deposit from $300,000 to $200,000. There was probably 30 to 45 minutes of discussion on this particular topic. There was, in some cases, I had to remind some of the budget committee members that we did have, in fact, have a CIP plan. There was other members who felt that when this was proposed, that it was a $200,000 deposit, I guess, in perpetuity, which is not the case. I did share with the budget committee that there were millions of dollars in the capital improvement plan, as well as in the short term that there was probably $600,000 to $700,000 of near-term expenses. So again, Ellen can certainly chime in, but I thought that we certainly made the case as to why we had to increase it. I did express to them that the two, I guess, primary drivers would be, one, our $200,000 deposit, which has been for the last 3 years, with inflation the way that it is, that $200,000 has kind of been eroded, the purchasing power. I also talked to them about, with the installation of a turf field, trying to set aside monies for the replacement turf. So right then and there, that would get you to your $300,000. I also want to be respectful of the Budget Committee. They spent 3 to 4 days or evenings going through our budgets, asking questions. They did not find reason to make any adjustments to our proposed budget, so I think that's something that needs to be stated. In this particular case, I think as your business administrator, I'm recommending a compromise. I think that a $250,000 deposit into the capital reserve fund and providing, I have a whole packet of information for the Budget Committee, which is the history of the Budget Committee, of the capital reserve fund, all of the conversations that took place, as well as a list which you have before you in terms of the projects that are on CIP in 23 and 24, that $250,000 is reasonable. So that would be my recommendation.
Ellen, go ahead. Oh, hang on a second, Jen.
Yes, I really like being at the Budget Committee, very interesting. I must say, Scott did an exceptional job in explaining history and current and recent past, and that to the Budget Committee. It was very well explained. Not too sure how much the newer people understand the process. I know, I for one, greatly appreciate that this board has stuck with the capital improvement planning process, and we try and budget, and we try and put monies aside in this fund, and I personally think we should continue doing that. We do have in 2023 $1 million set in the CIP, 2024 almost $3 million, and between 23 and 28 we have almost $20 million in capital improvement items listed. And I would think if we can put aside $300,000 each year, it would help us and the community better able to afford this, especially if we can not spend it every year, keep some of that, because it only goes up. 25 is 2.2 million, 2028 is 12.8 million on here. Yeah, we can keep it at 200, we can go to 250. I just know that that list is big, and the items on it are not frivolous. They're in keeping with our planning to maintain our facilities as best we possibly can. And I'm interested in hearing what other board members think, but I'd like to see us stick with our plans. And whatever you decide, it's fine with me, but I don't think it should go down to 200,000, because we've been doing that for years. An increase of any kind would be very helpful to us in this project. But like I said, we've got a lot and expensive maintenance items, I'm going to call it maintenance items, in CIP. And I'd like to see us really stand up for that. I would like to ask, what items specifically in 2023 are we looking to be doing, and it might be in here somewhere, I haven't studied through it, if this went up to 300,000, okay, that leaves us about 400,000, I think, less than, because we said we'd have 67,000 left at the end of this year. What things could we be doing with the 300 that we couldn't do with 2 or 250? I think that's worthwhile informing the Budget Committee, and if we can't do them, then when are we doing them? We're pushing it off? What's that look like?
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, no, good thought. Go ahead, Ginny.
Scott, what was the thought process or the reasons in your discussion with the Budget Committee that they had for decreasing the amount? What drove their decision?
I think it was a moving target for many of them, and
just a cut? I mean, did they have any specific areas?
One member thought that they thought that the 200,000 was something that we'd be doing every single year and it would never increase. So I have to demonstrate to that one member, here's the notes, the meeting minutes from these various public hearings.
Okay.
That That was never stated. So I think I can clean that one up.
Okay.
I think there was another member who didn't realize that we even had a CIP plan and kind of made a comment that we should do a better job planning, which I respectfully disagreed with, and I showed the member, the plan itself. And there are some who Ginny, I think fundamentally, whether it was 50,000 or 500,000, they probably wouldn't vote for it.
Okay, just to cut the budget, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and in fairness, they were very thorough, and they didn't do anything in terms of the operating budget, so I want to be mindful of that.
Right.
But this was very much a moving
Okay.
target. It was my sense that 250,000 would be an offer of good faith to the budget committee. Yes, it would be 50,000 less than what the board had requested, but I think it would be perhaps maybe more advantageous if there was a better recommendation on the warrant as opposed to sticking to the 300,000 and then potentially having a negative vote. We have not had that
No.
in quite a long time.
So maybe when we go to deliberative session for the new people that don't understand our process, have to explain more about exactly what this
Yeah, and that's something that myself, or
and how we
Jared, or
get to
Ellen
it
can
and-
spend maybe some more time between now and then with those members to explain the reason. But like I said, right after that meeting, I went back and I compiled a pretty good packet of information with all the meeting minutes over the years. And not to mention the fact that the voters have supported these deposits year after year after year. We have been very transparent in how we've spent that money, continue to be transparent. So tonight we had a discussion about where that money was going. So the biggest takeaway that I got from that meeting was with respect to the theater project, and although it was discussed probably 10 times at school board meetings, some members felt that there should have been more, maybe it should have been on the ballot. To which I explained that the voters, when it was created, gave the school board the authority to expend from that. In my opinion, I think it was talked about like a lot. It's going to be talked about even more. So to me, it's more about the transparency piece and letting the voters know, letting the public know, and I think this board has definitely done that. But again, it was all over the board, and Ellen saw that. I mean, there was about 4 or 5 different rationales for that decision.
I was just curious if there was something specific or...
So Brian had his hand up.
I was just going to share, I agree with Mr. Gross on this. So as much as I think 300,000 is the appropriate deposit amount, I think that there is something to kind of the good faith gesture that we heard the concerns of the budget committee. There are members of the budget committee that will not support this, irrespective of what the amount is.
Yeah.
But I think in general, we want to get as much support as we can. I can confirm, Scott, I was the one that pitched this to the budget committee. There was never any guarantee that that 200,000 deposit was in perpetuity. That was never part of the discussion at this table. That was never part of the discussion at the budget committee table either. So I apologize if there were people that had that belief. We did not say that. So having said all of that, the only other thing I would share is, and this is probably, I don't want to drop something here that needs further discussion, but we're not going to be able to do the CIP plan with capital reserve fund deposits. So we need to have a very frank, honest discussion that you are not going to do a multi-million-dollar project with 2 or even 3 or even $500,000 deposits. It's not going to happen. So in order for us to do the larger projects that are on that CIP list, which includes some big ticket things, you're talking about roofs, heating system, asphalt, drainage, a lot of significant capital projects, the only way we're ever going to be able to do that is going to be to look at a bond at some point in the future. I'm not suggesting we talk about it now. I'm not even talking about saying that we talk about it within the next year or two. But at some point in time, it's just too large. There are too many needs. And looking at and considering a larger project that you would bond would likely be one of the ways that the board could consider.
Go ahead, Alan.
That also speaks to potentially the need to build this fund, to keep expanding on it, to put more in there. Of course, each year we have so much we need to use it for, but if we can in some way build that fund to help offset those really big projects down the road, would be very helpful. I think I said it before, I'm pretty sure I heard Budget Committee ask for what specifically would we be using the funds for. Now, Scott explained to them our lists, and they've got all the information that we've ever had, but I'm thinking more specifically, this money would be used for this, and this project, whatever it is that we would be using it for. And there was somebody on the Budget Committee who just votes no because they didn't agree with CIP being formed at all when it was formed. So we've got some different personalities and different perspectives on there as well. But I think if we came in with this 250 or 300 with the specifics of what we're looking to use it for, and, you know, if we don't need to use it all, it'd be great to be able to build that fund for the future needs as well. Might be a very plausible way to go and get public support as well at the deliberative and public hearing and deliberative sessions.
So does anybody else want to have a chance to talk? So we agreed to 300, but Scott's recommending 250. There's a motion here that Scott wrote. Does anybody else want to discuss how they feel? Shane?
So this isn't in relation to the number, but I would say that I also watched this particular meeting, and some of the conversation was perplexing to me. But I would say that underlines the importance of our town boards communicating, not just at budget time, but throughout the year. So I know Scott mentioned we talked about the theater project numerous times here, but it looks like members of the budget committee don't necessarily watch our meetings, and probably vice versa.
Fair.
So it may be something to think about moving forward, that maybe we invite them in 1 or 2 times a year outside of budget time, because I think that would eliminate some of the conversation we had, like a member not knowing that we had a CIP plan and saying that he's never seen it. But you know, maybe if we make that communication a little more frequent, that might be helpful in the future.
Great. Thank you, Shane. Anyone else?
Just a
Red.
quick
Ellen?
one. Jared, you're our rep to Budget Committee. How often in the past 2 years have been brought forward a mention of the high school project?
High school project or any project?
Any of our projects?
We share it with them all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
So this is not something new and never heard of?
There's a lot of new members on the budget committee
Yes.
this year. And
Yeah.
it wasn't helpful that the actual CIP rep was not present from the
Yes.
budget committee at that meeting either.
Right.
I think that individual would have been able to set the record straight on a bunch of commentary that occurred. That's my answer to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. All right, so we've had a lot of discussion. We need to come up. Did someone else, did you?
Yeah.
Had your hand raised?
On a separate note, I disagree with lowering it. If we're looking at managing by facts, and we're looking at this sheet and the projects that are listed on this sheet, as what Ellen had articulated, you know, let's manage by facts and say, this is why we need $300,000. Because we have $190,000 that we want to replace at Bartlett. Because we want to replace it in building transformer, that's $105,000 at middle school. There are members on the budget committee that think that we don't need the CIP, we can use the contingency fund for this, and this goes to the conversation Ellen asked earlier. The contingency fund is for emergencies. Whenever we plan for an emergency, there is a delay. So what if that panel actually goes, and then we can use the reserve fund? We're talking about not having school at the middle school, 4 full grades being remote or being transferred to other schools for teaching in order for us to actually get the fire panel in place versus preemptively maintenance of getting it done, planning it during a downtime. So when we talk about using the contingency fund, we're talking about actually having no ability to use the schools at that point in time. I always say, let's manage by facts. we clearly have at least $300,000 worth of activity that we can do. I would reaffirm it at $300,000, and as long as it's not at the end of January, I will go to the budget meetings, and I will articulate this specifically. That's my opinion. I would vote not to lower it to 250 at this point, because we're just weakening our position if that's the case.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else? Go ahead, Dan.
When is the next budget committee meeting scheduled for?
They don't have one scheduled. This was approximately 2 weeks ago when they met, which was right after our Monday school board meeting. So they have not met for some time, and they were waiting for us to have this meeting before they might even potentially recall a meeting for budget.
Have they made a date for their public hearing?
Yes.
They have. I think it's, we got it wrong, so I
Going
won't.
sometime in January.
Yeah.
The
did set a
reason I'm
date for
asking
it.
these questions is because as our rep, and you feel you could convince them to change their vote, because we're talking, if a motion would have been taken at that night to either recommend or not recommend, the not recommend would have made it 8-4, which weighs, yeah, go ahead.
My personal opinion, I wasn't in the essence of the meeting like Ellen was. I was like Shane, looking at the meeting retroactively through the videos. I would say if we were sticking to our managed by facts of these are the projects we want to do in 2023, 2024. This is the reason why we need this money. I think that would be a convincing argument. As Scott said, and I agree with Scott, there's going to probably be 2 to maybe 4 individuals that are always going to vote no. But if we say, no, we need $300,000 in this fund, and here is why, I don't think that 8 people would have voted no to not recommend. I think it would be a different vote, I think it would be a different number, and I think the vote would be to recommend, in my opinion.
And if I may ask Scott, would you concur with that conclusion? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I am.
It's hard to say, because, I think Jared is spot on in the sense that one of the members who was the CIP rep was not there. And you never know how these conversations go when a member is there who is intimately involved in it. But it's really hard to say. And again, if the goal is to try to get as many budget committee members to recommend it, I guess I would hedge my bets and go with 250. If it's, obviously, there's the ability to stick with 300,000, I don't know if the spread of those votes would be as strong. I think it might be a closer vote, but again, it's so hard to say, because it was one meeting and people do change their minds, but it's I don't know, like, I don't want to contradict Jared, I don't, it's hard to say. I don't know where they're going to land, but if I look at what they were voting that night, it would have been 8-4 not to recommend, so.
So if I may, as my final follow-up,
Yep.
we have limited time between now and our motion to recommend or not recommend on the ballot. Do you believe we have sufficient time to convince them of the need and the purpose of the 300,000 and any ancillary time after that before they make their motions? Of course, they can always reconsider for application on the warrant. We may not need to make a motion tonight and set it on your shoulders to talk on our behalf at the next meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with that, Dan. I don't think we necessarily need to make a motion other than to say we've caucused within the team, within this board, and, we are reaffirming our need for 300,000, and here's why. I have no problem making having that conversation.
Thank you.
So Ellen had her hand up.
Yeah,
and then
just real
Ginny.
quick,
Go ahead.
I think we may have just skipped a very important group of people that need to hear the needs and about this, and that's the public. They have not heard from us why we're asking for 300,000 instead of 200 and what the needs are for. And I think it's very important to let them have a say as well prior to putting something on the warrant. Whether it's public hearing, deliberative session, however this process works out, I don't know when those meetings are. Actually, I do. I just pulled it up. January 10th, I think I had, is the public meeting, public hearing. Yes, it is. Public hearing, 6 o'clock, GHS, January 10th. I'd like to hear from the public as well. I think we still have time after that to change our minds if the public is saying, no, we don't want you to do these things. I think it's important that they hear the needs as well from us and then take it from there.
Thank you, Ellen. Go ahead, Ginny.
I think Jared makes a good point for the use of this, like, I'm so sorry. We have an important use for this, and we try to give money back every year. And we have money that, like our capital reserve and those types of projects where we try to plan and use our money effectively so that we can take care of the maintenance of the schools like they need to be. The only other thing that I have a problem with, though, is I think, and I hate to say this, but a lot of voting, I think, on these types of things get done by looking down at the bottom and seeing the 8-4. And so that kind of scares me with having such a big margin of potentially no votes on a recommendation. Just my thoughts.
I agree, Ginny. So, what is if we wait till there's a budget meeting, Scott, what is the recommendation here?
There's potentially no budget meeting, so
'Cause there's
if there's
nothing
no
scheduled.
action tonight, the 300,000 stays. It'll go to public hearing at 300,000.
In January.
Yeah.
And it could change at public hearing, of course. There could be
Okay.
a motion to change it to a lower number. If
Not at the public hearing.
Not
People
this
People could suggest a lower number, but nothing happens until deliberative session.
No, I mean, during the public hearing, the
Deliberative session, they can vote to reduce it. The public hearing is the Budgets Committee's ability to show the voters what they have come up with a budget, including all money articles.
But they can't actually change the numbers at that point? I thought they could for some
No.
reason. Only
They
Only
change the
deliberative,
budget number. They can't
Yeah.
change the money articles.
Right.
No, that's what I'm saying, is they could actually, during public hearing, there could be a motion by the Budget Committee to change the number.
The budget, yes,
Yes,
not the warrant article for the CRF.
okay. Might be thinking of something.
So if I may, just for clarification purposes, with respect to this particular warrant article, if the school board keeps it at $300,000, it goes before a public hearing. At that public hearing, there'll be comments, or no comments, for that matter. And at that meeting is when the Budget Committee puts forward their recommendations after that public hearing. So at that particular point, if there are no comments in favor of it, or there hasn't been an adequate job in terms of explaining why it should be 300,000, then they take their recommendations. After that, it goes to the deliberative session. If the amount is changed, then the Budget Committee has an opportunity to reevaluate, to take another vote. If it doesn't change, they cannot. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, right?
That is
Must
correct.
change the dollar, it could be by $1, but that's how that works. So, just so you're aware.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Maybe from a procedure-wise, maybe I'm just thinking that there could be a budget committee meeting after public hearing where they could change it. I think that's what's occurred.
Yes.
For all of our boards.
They can change, no,
Right
they're
at-
not going to change the amount, they're just going to change their voting.
No, they can. So if they have a
No,
public,
no,
if
no.
they have a public hearing, and they immediately afterwards have a budget committee meeting.
Right.
That is normal business, and they could change the number that they would recommend. That would be on the warrant.
No, they can't change the $300,000 number. They can just
Special
vote to
warrant
not
articles,
recommend.
they cannot, the Budget Committee cannot change the amount of special warrant articles. They are charged with coming up with a budget for the
Okay.
town and the school.
That's it.
That's their charge.
Gotcha.
It's not our budget, it's their budget that goes before the people.
So the operating budget rules don't apply to other warrant articles, is
Yes.
my mix-up.
You got it,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Same thing on the contract.
Yeah, yeah.
So is everybody okay with this? I mean, this is a risk, because if
And
the
here's
Budget
thing-
Committee
right,
doesn't
and here's the other thing,
recommend.
too, is that, please look at everything, you have 3 important warrant articles here, or more, but like, you have a contract, you have a budget, and you have this, is, to me, I think the happy medium is the 250, because it acknowledges their overall support of the budget and the contract, which is the most important thing. I just, and I understand that some of this is maybe trying to garner as many recommended votes as possible. That's why I believe that the compromise is the most effective way of going and looking at the big picture of everything. Not just this one.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Can we, after public hearing and hearing from the public, does the school board still have the option of adjusting our number?
I don't,
No.
At deliberative.
I believe
At
we
the
do.
deliberative session.
At deliberative.
Yes.
The part about hearing from the public, to me, seems to be, to me anyway, is important. Would they support this? Okay, for the needs and all, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'd like to hear from the public.
I don't know if anybody would come out and say, and I mean, I wish we could do 300, but I'm with Scott. I'm afraid if the Budget Committee does not recommend the 300, that's what voters are looking at. And then we get nothing for 50,000. I just don't know if that's a risk I want to take.
And the 250 is still an increase.
Right, it's still an increase.
It may not be the increase we were looking for, but it's still an increase.
Right. Jenny?
Could I make a motion to go with the modified amount?
Well, there's a
250
motion
there
number
is.
4, if that's what you're looking at on your,
Is it time to do that?
if that is, I mean, you can make the motion, if there's a second, then we would take a vote, and then go from there.
It's on the peach.
On the peach.
On the page.
Number
okay.
4.
Number
I make
4.
a motion to authorize the business administrator to change the amount of the facilities capital reserve fund deposit to $250,000 on the FY '23 March warrant.
Okay, do I have a second? Oh, are you seconding?
Yep.
Okay, so read a second. Is there any discussion before I take a vote? Go ahead, Dan.
I'm going to do just one more. I could have stayed with the 300 because we can change it at deliberative. I can change it to 250 because we can change it at deliberative. So either way we go tonight, I will vote in favor, and then perhaps we can increase it to 300
At deliberative.
at deliberative. Well, I want to hear from the public to see at the budget hearing, because we get the, I'm sure the Budget Committee will ask us, is there someone to present this particular warrant article? And we can discuss that, we really kind of need 300. We made it 250 because the Budget Committee suggested it. If there's a lot of discussion here at the public, come out and let us know. What do you want? We're going to give you the list of projects that we believe we should or could do. If you want to do them, let us know. And we'll do what we need to do to see if you can support us at the election. And if not, it is what it is. I mean, this is for the people. We're trying to listen and do it for the people.
Thank you, Dan. Any Ginny?
I agree with you, Dan, but I also wouldn't want to lose the contract, have the budget committee, not accept the contract anymore. So it's kind of
It's a hard situation.
it's kind of a scary situation to be in.
So we've had a lot of discussion. We have a motion, we have a second. So I'm going to call a vote. Ellen, did you have something before?
The motion is for 250, right?
The motion is for 250. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
1, 2, 3 opposed, abstaining. All right, so we have 3 noes and 5 yeses. So motion passed for 250. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Scott. All right, so moving on.
All right, so next is the SAFE grant.
Yes, and Stephen Bourget is here.
In case there are any questions. So, so you should have a memo in your packets, and essentially, we've had a public hearing for the SAFE grant. It is for access controls, because that's where all of this grant money went to, access control projects across the state. We put in for access controls here at Goffstown High School for over $152,000, but the cap on this grant is $100,000. So there's going to be a shortfall of $52,576. The other 2 projects, the Mountain View additional access controls and the Bartlett additional access controls, are covered fully 100% by the grant. The other thing I should let you know is that originally when this SAFE grant was proposed, we thought that it might have upwards of a 20% match. They eliminated the match altogether. So with that, in order to do this project, we would need to do a budget transfer. And my proposal is to use funds from our regular ed transportation line. We're not running 22 buses due to the driver shortage, and we do have sufficient amounts of monies in that line to transfer it into the IT line to cover this project. So that would be, my recommendation. So that's kind of where we're at.
So there's 2 motions. So does anybody have any questions for Stephen, since he's here, on any of the grant information? Somebody should have one question. The poor guy has stayed all night.
Well,
He knows the
I'm
answer.
sorry, Steve, I don't have a question for you right now. I have most. We use some interesting terminology called access controls. So what we can really tell the people, what we're doing is trying to lock the doors during the day so the bad guys don't come in very easily by opening doors or doing things. And some of the ways we're going to do that are IT-related, smart. Now you can go, Steve.
Okay. So the Uvalde, Texas incident was caused by someone getting into an unlocked or unsecured door. In all of our schools in Goffstown, except for the high school, if you have a door that's propped open, after a couple minutes, a local sounder starts buzzing, an annoying buzzing noise, until someone goes over and shuts the door. Goffstown High School has 47 exterior doors. There's no notification on any of the doors that said they're propped open. So the idea being, as part of this project, if a door is propped open, everyone in the neighborhood's going to get annoyed by the buzzing of the door, and someone's going to close it to make it stop. So that's one of the pieces that's part of this project. Another part of this project is Goffstown High School is the only building that everyone has to use keys to get into. So someone loses a key, a master key of the building, now you have a potential problem. In the other buildings, when people lose their key fobs, I turn them off and we issue them a new key fob. We don't have to worry about rekeying the building. All we're doing is replacing a $6 key fob, as opposed to a major rekeying project for a building this size. So those are some of the major pieces. Other pieces that this project will include is right now they have 2 stations where they can buzz people into the building, and they can only be buzzed in from one spot. All of our other buildings, when they buzz people in, any secretary can buzz them in from their phone, from their desk. Right now at Goffstown High School, you have to stand at the front desk, look up at the screen, and try to make out who the person is on the fuzzy camera picture of who you're letting in. So this will address part of that. We're looking at putting 4 of those buzz-in stations in the building. one on the front door, one on the back door where they are existing now, one on the loading dock delivery door, and one at the exit to the softball fields. So that way we can buzz people in at those locations, and they can open those doors from the main office. Another piece as part of this project is, at Goffstown High School, they go around with the key, and they unlock all the doors in the morning, and sometime after 7:56, the custodian walks around with the key and locks all the doors. Every other school in Goffstown, they push the button, they unlock the doors during arrival dismissal time, they push them again, and all the doors lock. So if you had an incident during arrival dismissal time at Bartlett, they can lock that building in a matter of seconds. In Goffstown High School, someone's got to run around and lock 47 exterior doors with a key. So those are some of the items that we're working on addressing as part of this.
Go ahead, Shane.
I just want to thank Mr. Bourget for that vivid explanation, because it was all at once terrifying and shows us that we need to get this project done like yesterday, if not earlier. So thank you for that. I did not know that we had so many, first off, entrances here at the high school, but entrances that were not necessarily manned. So I would say let's do this ASAP. Thank you.
There are a lot of classrooms that have exterior doors in this building, especially in the art complex and the tech ed complex.
Does anyone else have any questions for Stephen? So there are two motions that we'll need. One is accepting the SAFE grant, and then the other is moving money. Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, I'll read the first one for the SAFE grant.
Sure.
Okay. I move to accept and expend the SAFE grant for access control projects in the amount of $110,280.
Thank you, Ellen. Shane, you're seconding? All right, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. All right, so then the second.
I'll do.
Go ahead.
Number 5.
Number 5, yep.
I motion to authorize the IT director and business administrator to process with the access control projects at Bartlett, MVMS, and GHS based on project cost proposals. And furthermore, direct the business administrator to fully fund this project with a budget transfer in the amount of $52,576 to come from the current FY23 budget.
All right, do I have a second? By Ginny. Scott, do you need that to say it's coming from the?
There's another motion. See, this was unique.
This is, all right, there's another
It's on the
motion.
back, only because I don't
It
know what the board will do or not do, so therefore, on number 7 is another
I don't
budget, is
have
the budget
7.
transfers, but I haven't gone over those yet.
We don't have
We don't
that.
have 7.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We don't have a 6
All right,
either.
so is this good the way that Caroline read it?
Do you want me
Yes.
to?
Okay. All right, so I have a motion, I have second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. All right, Scott, what else do you need?
So the next one we're going to discuss is the Wi-Fi replacement
Okay.
/ density project, and I'll turn this over to Steve. You do have a memo in
Yep.
your packet with respect to this one. It's a little bit longer.
I don't have a motion. Okay.
Want me to make that motion?
No,
So
Stephen,
I'll just summarize what
yeah,
it is.
go ahead.
So we put wireless infrastructure into this building, or the last time we refreshed the wireless infrastructure in this building was 2014. Prior to that, the equipment was put in 2006. Most of the equipment has a life expectancy of about 5 to 7 years. So 5 to 7 years from 2014 is, well, in the past. So the equipment has reached end of life. Extended support runs out in January of '24. Now, you may be thinking, well, if extended support runs out in January '24, we have some time. Well, when I met with vendors to get supply chain timelines on this equipment, one vendor was telling me 6 to 9 months to get the equipment in. The other one was telling me minimum of 18 weeks. In order to install the equipment, we have to rewire a good portion of Goffstown High School. Pretty much think of every classroom on the first floor of the building, because that's the wiring that was put in 2006. And unfortunately, that wiring cannot handle the full speeds that the newer technology is designed to handle. that wiring was put in for 4th-generation Wi-Fi equipment, and the current generation of equipment now is Generation 6. So it's only really capable of handling about 40% of what the new equipment can support. So that's why it's coming to at this point as opposed to coming over the summer. We're hoping that by getting approval now to look at addressing the wireless, I can install it in July and August. We are seeing, because of the age of the equipment, it is beginning to show its wear and tear. It's beginning to show its end of life. We have connectivity issues in most buildings due to the fact that when it was put in 2014, not everyone was carrying around a internet-enabled device in their pocket, and the speeds and connectivity at that time were much lower and the demands were much less than what we're seeing now, especially post-pandemic, where we're using online tools such as Schoology as part of our regular day, which in 2014, it was, basic web surfing, and maybe YouTube was the big in thing at the time.
Yeah. All right, does anybody have any questions? Oh, Shane, go
I just had
ahead.
a quick question for our student representative. Do you find the Wi-Fi at the schools to be problematic?
I do. One of my friends actually had a Zoom meeting. We're doing a project in our AP Language and Composition class where we have to prepare a TED Talk for the end of the year. And the Wi-Fi was so bad that she couldn't get on the Zoom meeting with a professional who she was supposed to be interviewing with that day, and so she had to reschedule her meeting. But yeah, it is a bit of an issue.
So I think this is another project that should be a priority.
Yes.
I would certainly agree, and when we think about the Wi-Fi density here at the high school, we need to think about not just our immediate needs, but we need to look into the future as well. So when you think about, we're already slow, we're already not having the ability to give our teachers the instructional tools they need to do their job, but we need to think 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, and certainly within that time frame, you're going to be looking at and probably having a recommendation for a one-to-one device environment. So our network is only going to continue to get more busier. So I couldn't possibly support this project anymore.
Go ahead, Lily.
I know in language classes, in pretty much every language class, they use games like Kahoot and Gimkit, and that can be really challenging when you have multiple language classes going on at the same time, and the Wi-Fi is slow, you can't get on, and so sometimes we have people like sharing and stuff like that, and that's just not giving everyone like the individual experience of like learning and finding their way on their own. So yeah.
The proposed project is designed to put a wireless receiver in every classroom, in pretty much every building. There are a few odd exceptions to that, mostly the old part of Bartlett, where if I put that many receivers in, they'll bleed over themselves, given the construction of the building. But pretty much all of our brick buildings, we're looking at a receiver pretty much in every classroom, with high-capacity receivers in the larger assembly areas. So like the high school, that would mean the gymnasium, the library, the theater, the main, and then the entry areas of the main office, gymnasium, and theater. In the middle school, that's the library, gym, and Hilltop. And the elementary schools, those are the gymnasiums to handle that large influx. And this is not just to support the day-to-day operations of the school, but also to accommodate the venue usage outside of the school, such as voting, both here and at Bartlett, and other organizations that use the space. Because our connectivity is a challenge in multiple areas. We've upgraded the internet service to the building, but unfortunately our wireless receivers and the rest of the infrastructure is not quite there to support it. The memo shows it broken out as a 4-step process or a 4-stage project. This is identified on there as stage 1, which is replacing the receivers. Stage 2 is the recabling of the buildings, which we finished Mountain View last summer. The high school was slated to be worked on, but unfortunately due to supply chain, my cable came in September, even though we ordered it in June. But that's stage 2. And then stage 3 is dealing with the actual equipment that the units are going to plug into. We've started getting bids on those, but that's a project that can happen later. The vendors have guaranteed me that the new receivers will work with the equipment we have, just not at full capacity. And then stage 4 is security. But we have to start with stage 1 because all the other ones are dependent on that one. And that has the longest lead time at this point on all the equipment.
So if no one has any questions, I know Scott wrote up a motion. I don't have it with me.
What's it called? Oh, the Wi-Fi
For the
density thing?
Wi-Fi.
Number 6.
Number
Okay.
6. Oh, you have it.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
I motion to authorize the IT director and business administrator to proceed with the Wi-Fi density/replacement project based on the cost proposals presented, and furthermore, direct the business administrator to fund this project with a budget transfer in the amount of $180,000 to come from the current fiscal year 23 budget.
Thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
We know we have, it just says budget, but we know we've got lines at which we're going to have
Yeah,
them.
if you want to just pause just for a second, so you're comfortable, the budget lines are going to be coming, the budget transfers are going to be coming from the regular education transportation line, which we're going to have about a $300,000 savings this year because we're not running our contracted number of buses. We're almost at the bare minimum right now. As I said to the A&F committee, I think when we renew our contract, we currently have 22 buses. We probably should be striving for about 18 or 19 buses, but 15 is just like the bare minimum. We are going to see increased fuel surcharge costs, but overall, I'm anticipating about a $300,000 student transportation savings this year.
Scott, did you also, I know I was going to talk about it during my superintendent's report, but do you want to talk about, we just got the amounts for the retirement reimbursement? So the board has heard us talk about that we're receiving a one-time retirement
That's going to drop
reduction.
into fund balance.
And we, right up until, just last week, we still didn't have affirmation on the amount. So we are getting, and I think, did Laura already receive this?
It was in process, meaning that it's.
So the amount that we're getting just for the retirement reimbursement for Goffstown is $265,440. So that amount, you can't spend it, but you can allow it to drop into your, it's going to come in as unanticipated revenue, and that will automatically go for tax relief. So yes, you're going to be spending 180, but you're getting 265.
And we're going to do budget transfers next. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion about the Wi-Fi? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous.
And I just want to clarify for the public that our Wi-Fi density project and access controls were projects on our CIP. And they have been for many, many years. And we were able to secure a grant, at least for the access, controls. And we've been able to do a lot of CIP using grant funds over the last, 2-3 years. So just wanted to put that in the record.
So before we go on, are we done with Stephen? Can you
Yes.
go home?
Actually, Steve wants to talk about the default budget.
I don't think so.
Sure. I coached you on that this afternoon.
I'm good.
Okay.
No, he wants to go home. Thank you for staying,
Thank you, Mr.
appreciate it.
Boyette.
Thank you. All right, so next is proposed budget transfers.
Yeah, so I gave you a revised sheet. Both of these projects, the SAFE grant and the Wi-Fi replacement, are going to be budget transfers that are going to be coming from the regular education transportation line. The SAFE grant budget transfer is in the amount of $52,576, and the Wi-Fi replacement / density project is in the amount of $180,000.
All right, so we'll do two motions.
You can do one as
one?
proposed. So
Okay.
or you could do two. It's up to you.
Denise, did you get Scott's motion?
That's number. You can do that one.
What he said? If
Shane
someone said
can
as
read it off.
proposed, are you good?
I'll read it from right here.
I got it.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
I motion to authorize the business administrator to process the SAFE grant access controls budget transfer in the amount of $52,576 as presented.
All right, so we have a motion, do we have a second by Carolyn? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Go ahead, Shane, you want to do the next one?
Sure. I motion to authorize the business administrator to process the Wi-Fi density / replacement project budget transfer in the amount of $180,000 as presented.
All right, do we have a second by Caroline? Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right.
With respect to the SAFE grant, the chair and the superintendent have to sign 3 documents in order for that to go into our grants management system, so I wanted to at least let you know that. And the only, I feel like I've been up here doing this forever here.
Well, now it's the default.
Is the default budget. So I thought that the default budget was acted upon by the board, but in looking at the minutes, I don't think that it was. I talked to Denise about it. So you have in your packet the default budget. Keep in mind that the default budget encompasses your general fund default budget, as well as your food service fund and your special revenue fund. So with that, you have the default there. You're gonna need to sign that default budget tonight, but there would be I need a motion to pretty much adopt it, put it on the warrant.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, I move to approve the fiscal year 23-24 Goffstown School Board default budget in the amount of $52,218,019 and place it on the March 2023 school district warrant.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, motion
And I
passed.
provided, Shane has, now it's passing to Ellen, 2 copies of the default budget, and you need to sign the first page next to your name, and there's 2 copies of it. So
Okay.
just sign both and pass it around, and then make sure I get it.
All right,
That's it.
thank you, Scott. All right, so moving on, high school field renovation, that's back to you or Ellen?
I can start, then Ellen, when she's done signing, she can finish, but, so it looks like I'll be signing the contract tomorrow or Wednesday. Went back and forth with lawyers, and I'm gonna sign it in the next couple of days. I spoke with one of the contractors, which is John Neville Excavating. They're doing some of the removing of the topsoils. They're going to start right after the new year. So I think on Tuesday, January 2nd, they will be starting the project, and they will be taking down some of the fence line, and we're going to be cutting down a couple of trees. We have some trees that are tall enough that they could land on the field, so we want, and they're pine trees, so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. But other than that, we're ready to go. It's pretty exciting. Ellen, I haven't shared this with you, but I know that Brian has some golden shovel in his office or something, and yes.
Oh, that's right, we're gonna do a groundbreaking.
Yeah,
Right.
so hopefully, it might be this week because
Okay.
of the holidays, so.
Maroon ribbon.
Let's let me know.
Anything else
That's it.
add on to that, Ellen, with the
No,
field?
it's, I think I've said this before, it's been a pleasure to work on this committee. Very knowledgeable people.
Awesome,
And thank you to Scott for all the work he's done as the administrator.
great, thank you so much. Budget committee, Ellen,
I think we did it.
Yeah.
there's nothing more to add.
I love that, Jared. It was like
Gives her the floor.
The Godfather.
All right, I know. All right, C&E, Ginny.
Okay.
And we have a thing in our packet of all your stuff, so. we
Okay,
can
good.
follow
Okay, I'm
along.
glad that you got that. We had a presentation from Joyce Lewis, who goes over our course guide every year. And basically, we had already okayed the classes that we needed to have money to budget for this year. which were the geography, the economics, and the physical education classes. So basically, other than that, most everything was just cleaning up language, and a number of the names of things have changed, so there were a lot of name changes along the way. The fine arts graduation requirement, most of the kids who participate in fine arts already get a credit through band, and that is, the fine arts graduation requirement has been changed to visual or performing arts credit. So that'll be changed in the handbook. The ICT credit course was alphabetized and reorganized, so just change in verbiage. Reorganized the courses, updated the descriptions, MST program, construction and manufacturing technology, the RS college composition, chemistry and chemistry honors, computer education, Latin 1 and 2, and she removed the outdated information. And the Project Running Start program that we have here, where kids take college, high school classes and get college credit for them, has changed to RS. So it's Running Start instead of Project Running Start. And that's to be consistent with the community college system of New Hampshire. So that's basically all of the changes to the course running, the course programs. And we would be looking for a motion to recommend these changes.
Were you making that motion?
Yes, if you'd like to, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll second it.
All right, so Ginny made the motion, and Ellen
Are there
seconded.
any questions about
anybody-
anything, any of the changes along the way?
These are the 6 bullet points that are on this sheet?
Yep, at the top.
That's basically, it's mostly just language, Dan, because we already approved the courses, and we approved the courses earlier
Yep.
because they had budget implications to them.
Right, I remember the 3 courses.
Right, so we had to do that earlier so the
Somewhat.
money could be put in the budget. And this is just going over the program of studies and fixing language, making the descriptions more clear, so that students could really understand what they were choosing for a class, what they were going to get if they took that class, and just some, like I said, name changes and stuff. So this is just, cleaning up paperwork, basically.
Any outstanding, outdated information? The last bullet, it says, we removed outdated information. I didn't know if there were any big hits.
So Dan, I'm happy to speak to that, Ginny,
Yeah,
if that's
thank you,
okay.
yeah.
So they took out the language on the online academy out of the program of studies, which we had during our remote learning and our hybrid learning. So that language has been taken out. And they also took out language regarding alt ed as well. So those were the
Okay.
program changes that were outdated that have been taken out.
Those are biggies. All right.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other questions for Ginny? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we pass.
And also, we went over the NEWA and the the SAS achievement data. We had presentations by Maple Avenue Elementary School with Susan Pishka and Lisa Johnson, Bartlett Elementary School with Jerry Guggen, Mountain Middle School by Lyle Hamill, and Goffstown High School by Kevin Farley. And they went over all of we have all kinds of graphs and stuff to show us where the kids have gone over time since the last testing cycle. And all schools presented historical performance data and spoke of the student growth. Our schools are meeting the needs of all learners. The NEWA achievement data continues to rebound as we emerge from the pandemic. The SAS achievement data continues to meet or exceed the state average, with an exception of a few scores at Bartlett. And this is basically because of the different things that we put in, the different tools that we put in for the teachers to use in the meantime. Yes, after COVID.
Do we know, because I know when we looked at some of the NEWA achievement data earlier and we saw what was applying, we tried to make some changes to
Right.
accommodate. Can you give us a little idea how well they have rebound?
Did the
They
board
didn't
get
get
the
the,
Wendy, do you
I
want
don't,
So, Dan, if I can speak to that, I know that Mrs. Moran is putting together all of the draft notes that you'll probably get at the next meeting. We can also provide the board all of
send
the
them around,
slides that
too,
will have
yeah.
all of the information, that will talk about all of the data. As Ginny had mentioned, we not only gave historical data, but Ellen and Retta and Ginny had also asked for some new data to be given at CNE. For example, at the middle school and high school level, we took our scores and took some of the other high schools in the area and middle schools in the area and made some comparisons beyond just state data. So I'd be happy to make sure that all of you have all of that information so that you can see that.
Here,
thank
Dan, you can look at these, and I apologize, I thought you were all going to get them. But they did show some improvement in most areas, like I said, other than there was a little bit of a glitch at Bartlett. They used multiple data points and assessments to determine the specific needs of students, multi-tiered systems of support, academic and multi-tiered systems of support with behavior as well, teacher support for in-class small school instruction with the Title I push-in support for small group literacy and writing instruction in grade 1 and push-in writing support for grade 2. The interventionalists that we okayed, including Title I, the IXL, online personalized learning, homeschool and school reading and math skill practice, which the teachers like and has shown to be effective. Continued supplemental literacy and math intervention for struggling learners, homework supports at MVMS and GHS. We have a homework help space both at Mountain View and at the high school for students that can sign up and go in and get help with a teacher after school. We do have tutor.com available for all New Hampshire students, grades 6 through 12, for any child that needs some extra help. They can just sign through and get anonymous help with what they need help with. After-school enrichment activities, there's robotics and chess going on for kids. And the NEWA Fall Benchmark and NEWA Winter Progress Check will be happening as well.
Go ahead, Rose.
I'd just like to share something, with the takeaway. We had a lot of discussion at this meeting. I think it was one of our longer meetings. And I think the one important thing to keep in mind is this whole recovery from COVID is going to be long-term. It's not over. And I think that that's something that will continue for several years. And especially, it was great having the different schools there, because some of these students, they're all going to transition into other schools, so the problems that are beginning at the lower level start transitioning up. But they were able to address that, and it was really reassuring that they are working together on this and know that these issues will continue to be issues as they transition to the new schools. And I think we heard a lot also about the interventionalists in the role and the importance of that particular role for the students in making it integrated, so there's not so much shuffling around. So.
And the nice part of that, too, is that they're following grade to grade, because these tests are taken, and then they are fourth grade students here, but then next year they're fifth grade students. So the fourth grade students here and the fifth grade students are the same students, but the fourth grade here is a new set of students. So they're following where the students are going and how they're doing that way too. But also, New Boston is tied in with this project too. So the children that are coming from New Boston, they're looking into those scores and helping those children as well with kind of the same kind of program, so that when they come to Goffstown, they can fall right in and follow along as well. Did you have a question?
I just have one other question on the SAT scores. Was there a change in the scoring methodology between 2018 and like 2020? Because I see a big tumble both statewide and Goffstown.
I think it's a different test, isn't it, that they...
It's not a different
It said
test.
something like in school or in class or school day SAT or something like that?
It's a school day SAT.
Yeah.
So the thing that's different about New Hampshire is New Hampshire uses the SAT as our accountability assessment at the high school level. So when we're comparing, all New Hampshire students take the SAT. But in other states, that's not the case. It's only kids who self-identify, they're paying for it themselves, they're using it as a tool to apply for colleges, et cetera. New Hampshire's a little different. So when you are comparing scores and you compare outside of New Hampshire, you have to remember that the group of SAT takers is already a pre-selected, predetermined group that does not have broad representation.
It was a comparison of Goffstown to Goffstown to Goffstown to Goffstown that I saw, and I'm just wondering if that is still part of a COVID curve, or because it was such a dramatic between 2018 and 2019 before COVID hit, if there was a methodology change.
There was one other change. We used to be able to do a paper and pencil assessment, and we always opted to do that, largely because of Wi-Fi and other kind of related issues, but that is now required to be digital. So some people would say, Dan, that there was an impact from that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it was big. It went from like 542 down to 522 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's an impact, but it's.
And Joyce did tell us that several colleges are not requiring SATs as a admission need anymore either.
Thank you.
I saw your hand up, Brenda, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment again on, it's a little bit of what Ginny was talking about, that it's the juniors take the SAT, so it's just the juniors that year. So the next year, it's a whole group of students who may have different issues, they may have, the composition of those classes is different. It's a whole different group of people, so you're not, it's like apples to bananas to oranges. It's not also.
A lot of things coming together to try to analyze and try to figure out, is it working, not working, so.
Because each class of students is different.
Yep.
Like this class may be really good at this, and this class may be really good at this. And when you try to compare them,
Those
differences show.
It's hard to compare cohort groups. So the current third graders, if we were to compare them next year when they're in fourth grade, the instrument that we use to do that is the NWEA assessment, because we do that longitudinally over time. So we can track and monitor, we can watch a group go from first grade to second grade to third grade to fourth grade, and we just watch as they move over and go down in years. We can compare that same group. But the SAT does not allow us to do that.
All right, are you all?
Anything else?
Anything else for Ginny? Go ahead, Alan.
It's not a question, but.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The C&E committee gets wonderful information from our administration that I wish we had enough time that the whole school board could get this stuff. I know everybody gets minutes, and I encourage you to read them. But what we learn on this committee, if you can attend the meetings, or I have no idea if anybody would want us to email a video of them or something, but most of them are very informative and enlightening. And as a board member, I appreciate knowing these things. It gives me a lot more confidence in what's going on and what our administration and staff are doing with our children and how well our kids are doing. So I encourage the board members to, at the very least, read the minutes. And if you can attend, sit in the back or sit with us or whatever, but it's very informative.
And that's why we're trying to send all of these information packets that we get in the whole presentations that the presenters give us, so that everybody has that information.
Heather, may I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead,
One of the
Wendy.
things that we also discussed at the end of the C&E meeting is we have put in an additional C&E meeting during the month of February. If you remember, the board had asked Mr. Bulkey to put together some research on full-day and half-day kindergarten. So we've added a C&E meeting in February that Dr. Chisholm and Kathy Stoyle will be attending, and we'll be presenting that data and that research that Mr. Bulkey had asked to get done for the board. So I just wanted to mention that we have added a meeting to be sure that we're not waiting until the spring to get that information to you.
Perfect, thank you, Wendy.
And our next meeting will be on January 17th at 7 at the SAU.
Wow, thank you so much. All right, so PNC, Retta.
Yes, I have nothing to report. We haven't met since our last meeting at the beginning of the month. We will be meeting again on January 9th at 6:15 here in the library.
All right, thank you. Policy review was not able to meet last week, I think it was. So we are meeting January 17th at 5:30 at the SAU. And we do have second reads coming up later. SAU policy, Shane.
The SAU 19 Policy Review Committee met last Wednesday, and we reviewed, a handful at least of...
This is in our packet, you can mention.
Well, I guess I should have looked at that. So we reviewed a number of policies that will come before the SAU 19 board in April. And we don't have another meeting scheduled right now, but I think we are planning on getting another one in the books, because I think we have another small batch. And I think that might be the last batch we have of SAU policies. So January, February, I assume we'll try to meet again.
So what I wanted to tell you is Denise so wonderfully today typed up all the SAU first read policies with your track changes. A big thank you to her
Yes,
for
absolutely.
spending a lot of time doing that. So that is in your packets.
And I apologize to Mrs. Moore, and I put these aside to mention it, and then I couldn't find them, so, thank you.
Is that these? We've got a packet.
No,
of-
that's Goffstown.
That's us.
She put it in red,
It's a red 8.
so you know that, it's a separate packet at
Got
at
it.
the very
These are
end
from
of
last
your
week.
pile.
Yep, I saw it somewhere. Okay.
So now everybody can see what the track changes were. All
Thank
right,
you.
so you're good, Shane?
All good, thank you.
Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Brian.
So I wanted to let the board know that the state is offering some money to start a program called Unified Sports. And so we have jumped on that, and we have taken advantage of creating a unified basketball team here at Goffstown High School. That's not a program that we've historically had. So I'd like to thank one of our coaches has stepped up and is coaching that sport, and we will budget for that in subsequent years moving forward. This year that the state was providing some funding, so there's no cost associated with that this year. We think this is a really good program. So in addition to our unified athletes, we'll have kids who are serving as mentors who will work with the students and provide a great program. And actually, the first game is on January 18th. So we're looking forward to having that. And again, this is something that moving forward, because this was a kind of a last-minute state offering of money, this is something that we will budget for the next budget cycle as we go around.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
What sport specifically? Any-
Specifically, it's basketball. So that we're going to start with basketball, and then I think Mr. Huff's plan is to grow it from there.
Okay.
But we're going to start with basketball, and the first game will be on the 18th here at Goffstown High School.
3:30 PM.
3:30,
Broadcast
thank-
live on GTV.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. And So we have been talking about high school and middle school promotion, so high school graduation and middle school promotion.
I just had a question on what unified sports is.
So unified sports,
It is your hand
I'm
up.
sorry, Dan, I
Sorry,
should have
Dan.
explained a little better. Unified sports is a program for students with disabilities, so
Okay.
that there's a combination of students with disabilities and sort of typically developing peers, and they serve as mentors and help support and guide the kids. And it's really a nice program. And I'm
Yeah.
excited. This is something that I think is long overdue, and I'm glad that we finally got this moving.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
I'm sorry. The students that are regularly abled on that team, do they have to be from a sports team, or are they any
No,
children?
so in fact.
How does someone sign up for that?
So they self-selected, and what they've indicated to me is they already had a great turnout. So they said they've had a great turnout of students serving as mentor athletes. So I don't know how they recruited,
Okay.
but they already have a group of kids. Maybe Lily knows? Lily knows lots of stuff.
At the middle school, I did the unified PE program there, and basically it was like teacher and staff like recommendation for like to participate, and it was a great program. I mean, we even traveled with them. Like we got on a bus and we went to go play soccer against another team, and it was really cool. I haven't heard about it yet here. This is the first time, but that sounds great.
Yeah, so it's, I would say, hot off the press.
Yeah.
So we're looking at high school and middle school promotion. I wanted to let the board know it is our intent to relocate back to St. Anselm College. And this year, there is a pretty good reason for that, because the Fisher Cats will be on a home stand right during the window of time when we would be looking to have graduation. And I think it's a 2-week stand, so it's a little bit of, it would be a challenge for us. We would have to either go really early or kind of late. And so we use this as an opportunity to say, we've really enjoyed the Fisher Cat Stadium. I think it worked out great during COVID. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with the weather. So when you're thinking about the plausibility of thunderstorms, of, whatever the weather in June could bring us, being in a climate-controlled, air-conditioned space where we don't have to contend with the weather and we still have ample seating is really what we're looking to do. So I wanted to let you know, I would say unless the board has any objection, we will be hosting that on June 15th. So that's the date that we're looking at. And again, the Fisher Cats are on a 2-week home stand at that point. So I think this is really our best option. If the Fisher Cats weren't, if Fisher Cat Stadium was available, I think we would still have this recommendation. I think we got pretty lucky for 2 years, and I'm going to call it even with the weather, and we're going to move back indoors.
So June 15th is both the 8th grade and the high school graduation?
June 15th would be both.
Both,
So
okay.
we would be looking in the past, when we did the 8th grade promotion and the high school graduation, both at St. Anselm College, we did it on 2 separate days.
Right.
This time it will be 1 day. They actually gave us some favorable pricing. We think we're going to have kind of an economy of scale. When we think about the sound system, there's some pieces that we'll pay for once instead of twice. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
So is it, timing?
So the timing, Wendy, I don't know if we set timing, but think about probably somewhere around 2 to 3 in the afternoon, and then the high school would be more like 7 p.m.
Okay, that's.
So
what I
that
was-
we
yeah.
think that if you have an 8th grader and a senior, you'll have a busy day. You'll have a busy day. But you'll have 1 busy day instead of 2 busy days. So I do think it is a little better for families with that respect. But that's the timing that we were looking at,
Yeah,
right,
I
Wendy?
believe it was 2 o'clock, just to make sure there was enough time in between. Though the middle school and the high school use the same setup for St.
Yep.
A's, they do have to move seats around because of the numbers are different of the amount of kids that are being promoted from Mountain View and the number from the high school. We also wanted to make sure we gave enough time to set up for the band and things like that in between as well. And it won't stress Mr. McBride out as long as we're out early enough from the middle school.
I'm
so.
pretty sure Mr. McBride will still be stressed.
Probably.
High school graduation is a pretty stressful thing.
One of the
O'clock and
other
what?
things, if you don't mind me mentioning,
June
is
15th.
when we used Fisher Cat Stadium, we didn't
7.
have the ability to go and practice ahead of time. So for a lot of our students, whether they were high school seniors or 8th graders, it created a lot of stress and anxiety of the unknown. The nice thing is St. A's has always given us the ability to go the day before, practice, walk through it, and the students feel a lot more comfortable in my experience because they're able to practice. So that's another one of the factors that I think is a big one for our students for comfort of using Saturdays.
Thank you, Wendy. Good point as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the weather. So we had an interesting day on Friday, and if anyone was around in New Hampshire, it was a challenging day to say the least. So I wanted to let the board know kind of the decisions that I made and a little bit of the rationale behind them. So I was watching the weather very, very attentively, and what we anticipated was not what the weather did. And it wasn't just me, it was basically every meteorologist in the state. There was a real challenge on this snow to mix to rain line. And if you saw the maps, it went right through Goffstown and New Boston. We were, depending on where you were in town, you were either getting snow or you were getting rain projected. We had pretty much all snow. And I know at my house in New Boston, we had about 8 inches. I went out and drove the roads before 5 o'clock in the morning, as I usually do. The roads were terrible. The roads in New Boston were terrible, and they were already out. So I called a delay. I did want to let people know, we have the ability to call a remote day the morning of. So I didn't do that morning because I thought we were going to be sufficient with the delay. So I called the delay, and then I was on the phone with our meteorologist, and I think everyone believed that by 10 o'clock it was going to be 36 degrees and raining. And in my head, that was what I was planning for. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm watching it snow like crazy at my house in New Boston, and I ultimately decided a little after 8 to go ahead and close school. It was later than I would have wanted to do, but I do think it was the right call. And as I was looking out the weather at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was thinking, oh my gosh, am I glad we're not trying to get kids home in this mess, because it was awful. The roads were terrible. Anytime you went above about 1,000 feet of elevation, that's where it was all snow all the time. So it was a really challenging day. It didn't seem fair to me when I moved from a delay to a closing to then shift and make that a remote day. The high school has a schedule. Their schedule would have already been impacted. I didn't want to compromise it, and I didn't want families or teachers to feel like this was something rushed and last minute. So it was kind of a good old-fashioned traditional snow day. I understand that there were a fair number of students that were excited and surprised by that. So
Yes.
I heard there might even have been a Brian Balky meme going
was.
around Goffstown High School.
There was.
Yeah. Crazy kids.
It was incredible.
Yeah. So I already mentioned the retirement reimbursement, $265, $440 for Goffstown. New Boston is also getting about $45,000. So we're excited for both communities to receive that. I wanted to announce that tomorrow here at the high school, we will be offering the ASVAB, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. That'll be happening for sophomores here at Goffstown High School tomorrow. And I sent Heather a copy of something earlier. We were presented with a request from the Manchester School District that I wanted to make the board aware of. We are in what's called Region 15 for CTE, which is Career and Technical Education, and our students typically attend the Manchester School of Technology. Our current agreement is set to expire in February of 2023. And this past year, in the summer, in June of '22, the governor signed House Bill 1661, which has a new requirement for CTE centers to align their calendars with sending school districts. And that has to happen by 2024. So Manchester is proposing essentially a one-year extension of our current CTE agreement, which would extend it until June of 2024. And in that time, they're going to put together a work group to align our calendars. So this is something that we, in all likelihood, have no chance of pulling off for next year, or I don't think Manchester has a chance of pulling off, but we would go ahead and proceed with this. So I did want to let you know we had a request. This request also went to the Bedford School District and to the Londonderry School District, because all 3 towns use MST as our CTE center. So I have presented that to Heather. We are asking, unless there's any objection, I think this makes good logical sense. I spoke to the superintendents involved, we talked about it, and this really is think about aligning, forcing 4 school districts to have the same calendar seems like a little bit of a withering away of local control. I don't really like this, but it does make sense. And the board knows in practice, we tend to align our calendars with Manchester to the extent we can anyhow. However, we now have to look at things like teacher workshop days. So I think that is going to be really challenging.
They have a lot.
Yeah, so that's going to be some work. But in the meantime, we would be looking to do this one extension from February until June at the request of the Manchester School Board. So I had that update, and last week we had our safety meeting where we had all of our principals, our SIU admin, and our police and fire partners to continue our emergency preparedness. And the last thing I had was Mrs. Kohler already mentioned the research update that Dr. Chisholm did, and that will be going to C&E in February. I would recommend that the board might want to review this literature yourself. So after Dr. Chisholm does her presentation, we may send the research around. We hadn't looked at the research in a long time. Full-day kindergarten continues to be something that I think is really important. I wish we could find a way to pull off for our community. Full-day kindergarten will have significant building implications for us. So right now, based on what we would need, we would be in the market for about 6 classrooms, plus all related spaces. So you're talking about gymnasium, library, cafeteria. There's a lot that goes along with it. However, I think it's important for us to stay grounded in the literature and the research, because I do think full-day kindergarten is really good for kids. And in particular, what you'll see in Dr. Chisholm's work is at-risk kids have a carryover effect that extends beyond 3rd grade. So for some of our more at-risk kids, I think full-day kindergarten is absolutely mission critical. And I've talked a lot, so I'll stop there and just ask if there are any other questions.
I'll make sure her whole presentation gets sent to the whole board.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I know you and I talked about the lunch here.
Oh, yeah.
The high school, I wanted an update.
Yeah, and in fact, I apologize, that is on my list up at the top. I think I got so excited about unified basketball that I skipped right over it. So the high school lunch update, we will be likely making a recommendation in the January timeframe for to either continue the lunch program here at the high school. And just to remind everyone, we went from 2 lunches here at Goffstown High School to 1. And there are a lot of good reasons to do that, but there are also some challenges associated with that. And I will say this is an example of unintended consequences of passing laws. There is, we have no ability to do a student survey without getting parent permission from every single child in the school. So is something as simple as a quick 3-question survey to say, which do you like better, 1 lunch or 2? We can't do that without getting permission from every single parent. But what we would like to do is come back in January with a more formal recommendation to either continue or to abandon and go back. The one, I would say, fairly sizable thing that we're going to need to consider, and we'll bring the numbers with you, is we've seen a reduction in the number of purchased lunches. So our food service program is struggling associated with this change, even though I think that there are a lot of positives with respect to less transitions, kids having the ability to have, kind of lunch with their friends, et cetera. But I apologize that I forgot
that's
it.
okay.
It's on my list.
So are they still doing 1 lunch?
They're still doing 1 lunch. That has not changed or stopped. And I would like to have kind of a formal, either we're going to go back to 2 or stay with 1 for the remainder of the year. So what I'd like to do is to have that discussion at the school board level in January.
Go ahead, Alan.
Why the reduction in purchased lunches?
Well, I don't want to probably speculate too much. I think some of it may have to do with just more kids in the cafeteria. So if you're buying lunch, that the line might be a little longer. We have been tracking, and I think with the exception of Pizza Day, kids are getting through the line fairly quickly. I heard 8 minutes was an average, but I think we would want to update that. So it's not too bad, but I think that that's a factor. I think also when kids have the ability to kind of be mobile in the school and they can walk around with their friends and kind of have a little downtime, they may choose to be with their friends and maybe not go get lunch. again, this would be an example of the kind of question I would say, if you used to buy lunch, do you still buy lunch? And if not, why not? Those would be great questions to get feedback from kids.
Ginny, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just to get around the no survey policy, could you ever do something like a suggestion box? Would that be allowable under?
I would say a suggestion box would be. So if students, voluntarily wanted to offer up any input, we certainly could accept that. I think we can also have kind of discussions and focus groups. We can ask kids their opinion. It just can't be a non-academic written survey.
Or maybe the student government can talk about stuff. And
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I
think
actually.
the board would really like to know, how do the kids feel?
Yeah.
So why don't we plan to coordinate a little bit?
Definitely.
And maybe in January at that time, you could maybe get a kind of a pulse from.
I know student government would definitely like to do that.
I would love to have the kids' voice in this.
As long as we're within the
No,
law and
The other
everything.
alternative is, we send permission slips home, or we deliver them all via email, and we look at what we get for a response rate, and we survey just those kids. It would be incomplete, it would be a lot of work for maybe not a ton of great data. I think we likely would get just as much kind of anecdotal input from the students, but that's our timeline, and that's what we were considering. And I apologize that I
That's all
skipped right over that on my list.
Dan, you had your hand up.
Can you remind me of, is the time to have lunch, it was the same when you were competing with only half your peers to go to lunch, when it were 2 lunches, and it's the same amount of time for lunch when you're competing with your peers to go to lunch?
It's slightly longer.
But also, there's 2 places that you can get lunch. So I know a lot of kids go to the theater wing, and
Yep.
they have
That
like
a la
food
carte?
Grab and go.
Yeah,
Grab and go,
kiosks
okay.
there, and that food is also really good. And they have they've transitioned to like more hot stuff as well. They've been able to like give kids hot lunch as well as salads and sandwiches from there too. And I know a lot of kids who go to that line and get through it really quickly. So yeah.
So the time, a little longer, are we talking 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
No, I think it's probably like 11.
11 minutes. Okay.
So don't quote me on that.
No, I mean,
when we talk about this in
it's the delay
January.
of time,
Yeah,
so
Mr. Bulkey, I
it
believe it's
does-
6 minutes.
I think
We
it's
need,
6?
we need,
I
because
believe
I
it's
don't
6.
think the time has,
No, I thought it was more like 11, but
having
again.
kids dealing with that, I think that the time has not extended much, given the fact that it's the entire school.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
So I think in fairness to food service, as much as I respect student input, I would also like to get food service input, because I've seen
Yes.
those employees do the job during that 30 minutes, and to say that it's challenging would be an understatement. That's one. I'd also like to know from Megan, what does this translated decrease in food sales lead to a deficit over, for the course of the year? Because it might be something that the students like, or the majority of students like, but it might be something that, is the board willing to, let's say it's $150,000 to $250,000 loss, are you willing to pick that up in your, so it's more than just what might be good. It's also, there's consequences for the staff there who, and also, I think you might see a reduction in hours for employees with this going forward. So there's a lot of consequences. It's not just,
So we've been talking to Mrs. Bizzaro about this. She's been part of the conversations, and she'll be part of the discussion in
Good.
January.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, Scott, that I'd want to hear from Megan and her staff. Go ahead,
I just
Lily.
have a quick question. Are you comparing the amount of kids who are buying lunch from like last year's when it was free?
So we're actually trying to compare multiple years,
Okay,
because
that
last
makes
year
sense.
was such
Right,
an
yeah.
anomaly,
Right.
because no one had to pay for
That makes sense.
anything. The other big thing is, I want to make sure that all of our eligible students for free or reduced lunch are getting it.
Yeah.
You may be surprised to learn that many kids are choosing not to, and that's troubling to me.
Right. Shane,
That's
did
troubling.
you have your hand up?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Well-
I'm sorry.
Do you have more, Brian, or?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Because I'm circling back to the beginning.
Okay.
As a former unified basketball coach, I can offer a little bit of insight. I know there were questions about how students are chosen and things like that. Basically, it's like an open sign-up. It's like any other sports team where it's like the partners can make their interest known. The athletes, there's a little bit more restriction on the athletes because they have to meet certain criteria to be able to participate as an athlete in the unified team. But the process is very simple in my experience anyway. And they also offer soccer in the fall. They offer outdoor track in the spring. They offer volleyball in the spring, and of course the unified basketball. So it's a great program. It was a ton of fun to coach. The only reason I couldn't continue is because they had me riding the bus home with every kid, and I couldn't do that. It took forever. So I could only do that for one season. But the school I work at currently, we're the 5-time defending state champions for unified basketball. Won a couple unified soccer championships. So I hope that our program can build itself up that way, and I hope that we're able to expand
Exeter,
it.
what do you expect,
And I hope we're able to expand it to other sports as well, because I know that getting these kids involved and integrated into this extracurricular activities is so essential to their growth and their overall development.
For both
Thank you,
groups.
Shane.
it is.
Yes.
For both
Yeah.
groups.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's awesome.
So more on lunch in January with
Yes.
everybody here. And do you need a motion for the Manchester stuff?
I think at this point, I think you should have the chance to look it over. I think it probably makes sense to have a motion.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
And so the motion would be something to the extent to authorize the school board chair to sign the requested extension of the Region 15 CTE Center agreement to extend until June of 2024, and that during that time, a group will be meeting to comply with the requirements in House Bill 1661.
So have you seen that yet?
I got it tonight.
So do you want to
tonight.
look at it, and at our next meeting, you can report back to us, and then we can make the motion then?
Okay.
Is that?
Either way,
Either
I
way.
read through it. It was developed by the city's legal counsel.
Yeah, it's-
And the only.
Yeah, that worries me.
Well,
Do you want to send
Sorry.
it to all board members?
if you would like me to, so it's fairly straightforward.
Same old?
More or less, they did include some of the requirements around scheduling, which I thought, why not just extend the existing agreement?
Yes.
Take it verbatim.
Yep.
Extend that, but they added the new requirements of this House Bill 1661, which requires the scheduling, the planning, the coordination of the school calendar. So they added some of that language in. That was my only objection, is I didn't know if it made sense for that language to be added.
Our calendar is already
Set for
Is it
next,
set?
for the school,
Yeah.
for this
No.
school year.
For this school year, it's
For
set. We have not
yeah.
done the calendar
year.
for next year yet.
And that's going to make it more difficult because we need to do that. What's our option?
We don't have an awful lot of options here. So the only other option would probably be to be seeking permission from the Department of Ed or the New Hampshire Education Department to look outside of Region 15 and consider another CTE center.
Is there another CTE in
Well,
Region 15?
So Concord, it's not within our catchment
Okay.
area, but
Yep.
Concord is a CTE center, Milford is a CTE center, Alvern is a CTE center, and the language in the statute essentially says you need to go to your designated CTE center unless they offer a program at another center that a student is interested in. So the best example I could give you is Alvern has a more extensive agricultural program, and they offer things like diesel mechanics, where some of the other programs only offer, kind of traditional automotive, not
Yeah.
necessarily diesel, working on bigger, heavier equipment. And Alvern has a fully operational farm. So they have cows, they have agricultural equipment. So they offer programming that MST doesn't, but MST has things like, video game design. They have, nursing programs, as well as your traditional plumbing, electrical, et cetera. So I'm fine with that. And I just got this afternoon, or I sent it to Heather this afternoon and had some conversations about it. So I don't see any reason why we can't wait till next meeting.
Okay.
And if everybody would like to take a look at it, we'd be happy to send it out.
And Ginny had her hand up.
Wouldn't it be interesting to finalize a program where the Manchester school system has, goes by an hourly schedule and we go by a day schedule? to make calendars work and then to add another district
Our school
in
year
as
is
well?
longer. Our
Yes.
year is longer than theirs.
Yeah.
So,
So can you work around that within the law?
we're not the CTE center, so I want to be careful. This isn't my problem to solve. They need to make sure the calendars are aligned, not me. So I would say we will work with them through this endeavor. We will be collaborative. You're right, they have an hours-based calendar, and I think that those kids only go to school about 170 days. I think they have about 10 less school days than we do.
They have just about every Monday holiday off.
So,
And they have 5 snow days built in.
It's great.
yeah. Well, and again,
So what is the consensus? Do you guys want to see it? Brian can forward it to you. Or do you want to do a motion to, I mean, we kind of don't have much of a.
it's up to you. I
can
think
do
to
it
Dan's
next
point, I'm comfortable waiting till another meeting. And I would just let Manchester know that we've sent it out and we'll be voting on it in
Is
2
that
weeks.
good with everyone?
Sure.
Okay.
We can do our due diligence.
Yeah, so if you can forward that
Will
to
do.
everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so that'll be back in next board meeting. All right, so are you done?
I am, thank you.
Anybody else, any more questions for Brian? No? Okay. Moving on to old business, we have second reads. So we've already gone through questions and answers. So tonight is making motions and voting on them. So the first one is policy EEAA, use of video and audio system. So I'll take a motion to approve this, if everybody's good with it.
I'll motion to approve policy EEAA as presented.
Thank you, Shane. Do I have a second? By Caroline. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? We're unanimous. All right, the next one is policy GBEBB, employee-student relations. What was that, Ellen? Okay, thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, motion passed. Next one is JFAB, admission of non-resident students and tuition.
Move to approve.
By Ellen. Do I have a second? By Caroline. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. That's okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passed. And the last one is policy.
JICK, move to approve.
And JICK are both.
Yes.
Okay, by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Caroline. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so next, we already did the field trips, so we want to just confirm the deliberative session date and time. There was a little bit of confusion and location. So we had said it's February 9th, I think. February 6th is deliberative, is what I have. And
6 o'clock.
And I have 6 o'clock.
And that's our DHS, right?
But we talked about, because that's a scheduled school board meeting, doing a school board meeting at 6 to 7 and then deliberative at 7. What is,
I like that idea, doing the school board meeting first.
and short?
That way you need to get it done.
Yep. And that way we're not skipping a week and then having a lot the next time.
It makes sense.
Let's do it.
Is everybody good with that? So 6 o'clock school board meeting, 7 o'clock deliberative, and where is it going to be? Is it here?
Here at the high school.
Okay.
And was it last year that we did it at Mountain View?
Yes, that's why
And
I'm asking.
that was an
did not
anomaly.
work.
I can't remember why we did that, but
Because we couldn't
The theater,
distance
there
and
was
set
a
up.
production.
something going
here.
on here.
Yeah.
Though, it was good to get into the other schools, to bring the public into those schools to
Yeah.
see what needed to be done as well. So, I know that we did discuss maybe not
Yeah,
doing it at the high school.
It was just a
exclusively.
challenge, I think, for GTV. They had a lot of setup in the gym.
And the weather was bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right, so February 6th, 6 PM, school board meeting, 7 PM deliberative here at the high school. We'll let you know where.
Oh,
In the theater, or?
Theater.
What do you think, Scott?
usually in theater.
Usually
I
it's
think
the
the
theater.
theater.
So we'll do the school board meeting here and go down, or we do the
Okay.
school board meeting down there? We'll do it here.
No, we'll probably do it here.
Yeah.
And then walk down?
Yep.
Okay, so light board meeting.
Heather,
Yes.
is it a problem with GTV? Would this just not be televised? The school board meeting wouldn't be televised if,
Recorded or something?
We'll talk to them.
See what
okay.
they want.
My best guess is they'd be able to do both.
okay.
Okay,
I would imagine that they'd be able to do both.
okay. So is everybody good with that? All right, Denise,
And-
you got that? All
And we
right.
may postpone or not have an A and F depending on what's going on.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So if we do have an A and
We
F,
could do
it'll
it
be
at 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah. Does that work for you?
Perhaps we'll, as we get closer.
5:30?
If we do A and F? If we do A and F.
Yeah,
Dan will let us
we'll
know.
see what's on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and it
That
would be
would be
the
fine.
same for
Okay.
PNC,
Oh, right.
but I would have to look. We may not have any need to
Okay.
meet.
Sounds good. All right, so new business, there's none?
Nope.
All right, staffing.
So for notification, we have a track change for Jennifer Foisey, moving from bachelor's 15 to master's, so congratulations to Jennifer. And we also have an observer, Catherine Sudak, who is from Granite State College, who will be doing some observations of Mrs. Collins at Mountain View through about mid-January. For your approval, we have a leave of absence for Erin Humphreys, which will be for the remainder of the school year, and we have a nomination of a volunteer. Again, this is yet another phenomenal athletics volunteer in the Goffstown School District. Thank you to Nicole Osborne for being a volunteer gymnastics coach.
All right, so I'll need approvals for the leave of absence and the co-curricular sports nomination.
I'll motion to approve the leave of absence for Aaron Humphrey.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? By Caroline. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, and then the co-curricular. Shane, you want to do that one too?
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve the co-curricular sports nomination of Nicole Osborne as a gymnastics volunteer.
Great. Do I have a second? By Caroline. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, or unanimous. All right. Yes, Jared?
Just a note on this, Mr. Chair, I'd be remiss to say that I'd like to thank all of our student teachers that are leaving at the end of this week to finish out their education. So I know that my kids have one of the student teachers that they are thoroughly going to miss. So thank you to them, and good luck on their journeys.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Jared.
and we really have encouraged, I've encouraged schools to take as many student teachers as we possibly can, and student teachers are a lot of work, but I think we have a profound responsibility to make sure that we are seeding the next generation of educators, and so anything we can do to help that, we are.
Definitely. All right, is there other business that may legally come before the meeting? Go ahead, Ellen.
Just confirmation, am I correct that we're not meeting again until January 9th?
Yes, I was going to mention to everybody, January 2nd is a holiday, so we will have our board meeting on January 9th at 7. Anything else? And there is no non-public?
No non-public.
All right, so I'll take a motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Oh, Jared got it,
For the rest
Ellen
of the
a
year.
second.
Second, if you don't have one.
I had Ellen a second and Jared made the motion.
That's okay, no matter what, we can vote.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right, everybody have a wonderful holiday. Happy Hanukkah.
Yes.
Merry